At Classical 90.7 KVNO on the UN Omaha campus. I'm here with music director designate Ankush Kumar Bahl. Welcome, Maestro.
Thanks for having me.
I see you have your tea handy. That's good. It's been a long day for you, I understand. So thank you so much for joining us this evening.
All good things.
So this weekend's program features works of Felix Mendelssohn and Jean Sibelius, a program that's full of joy and creative inspiration, really inspired by their connection with nature in very different places. Can you talk a little bit about the program and why you programmed this?
You know, you walk through life and you meet composers, and some you really love and you really want to get to know more, and some it might take longer to get to know and love them. So these are two composers that over the course of my career I've really just fallen in love with. The Mendelssohn, the piece by Mendelssohn we're playing, which is called the Hebrides Overture, is a phenomenal work with so much color and description. And it was really an early version of what became a tone poem in the Romantic classical repertoire. And Mendelssohn, not only was he a very prodigious composer, he was also ahead of his time. So he was writing things like a tone poem way before other people were writing it. And this particular piece is about a place he traveled to when he was younger. In Scotland. He lived in and was born in what we now call Germany. And a trip he took to the Isles of the Hebrides, he found a cave, which was known as Fingal's Cave. And everything he heard, everything he saw, all the sounds that encompassed that little visit in that little cave really took him. And he actually drew a picture of that in a letter to his sister. And at that point, he had the seeds of the piece that became the overture we're going to hear on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, it's interesting how also Wagner was inspired by that very same area. Now the big question is who was inspired first, but Mendelssohn, I would agree. So the second work on the program is Sibelius' Symphony No. 2, also inspired very much by Sibelius' love of nature. There's an interesting documentary out there detailing all the different artworks that were inspired by Sibelius. Can you talk a little bit about your selection of the Second Symphony for this program?
Yeah, so I was saying this, some composers just kind of hit you in the face and say, you get me and I get you and we're this. And I'm like, I didn't know I liked Sibelius. And then I came across his Fifth Symphony, I think, first. And then I conducted his Seventh, and it's just a massive work. And then I started to get to know his Second and his First. And his First is really interesting. Sibelius was a Finnish composer writing in the 1900s, and he wanted to take late 1800s, excuse me. And he wanted to take the music he loved of Tchaikovsky and Brahms and Beethoven, but make it his own, make a Finnish version of this beautiful music he loved and cared about in the classical romantic repertoire. And so, of course, he wrote what he knew. He wrote the First Symphony sounds like of Tchaikovsky's Seventh Symphony. It just sounds a lot like that kind of music that he grew up loving, and that's typical of a first go at it of a symphony. But his Second Symphony, I think his Second Symphony is where he finds his voice, and he finds this really wonderful texture that he just keeps working on until he gets to his Seventh Symphony, which I think is his finest work, certainly his finest symphonic work, to my opinion. And yeah, you start hearing the nature, you start hearing the birds, you start hearing the darkness, you start hearing the wind, you hear how I always imagine school children in the wintertime, walking to school with their backpacks in the snow and the rain, and it's dark. And then they go to school, and in the middle of school, there's like maybe an hour or two of sunlight, but they're in school. And then the sun sets and they walk back home in the dark again. I think it just helps me get into the mood of what Sibelius was doing when he was writing this music. He wrote what he knew, and you'll hear that darkness and that wind and that weather, which we're experiencing now in Omaha, coincidentally. But then you also see the sunlight, that light at the end of the tunnel, that glimmer when that sunshine brights, and you feel that warmth, and your body gets that heat and that sunlight, and you just that melting feeling you get, all in his Second Symphony. It's fantastic.
Yeah, so much beauty, and yes, that sense of peacefulness, of solitude, yeah, all connecting with nature. And yes, very much like what we're experiencing this week. With regard to the Omaha Symphony, congratulations on your appointment. And it's a very important time in the development of the symphony orchestra. They're celebrating their 100th season, and here you are. So in this time of change and growth, the huge hit that the arts has taken during the pandemic, which none of us could have foreseen. What do you see for the future with the Omaha Symphony in your tenure?
Well, I see such an opportunity. Thanks for asking that. As you said, we're concluding with Thomas Wilkins's wonderful tenure in the 100th year. Coincidentally, it's the 100th year, which I think is such a nice round number, as we all know, and such an opportunity because we're now going to start, or I'm going to start with them in their 101st year, starting the next century of the Omaha Symphony. And while they've been doing such amazing things in the past, culminating with Thomas's ridiculous tenure, just unbelievable, I think it's an opportunity to kind of take it into the 21st century, take it into its next 100 years. And of course, during the pandemic, coming out of the pandemic, I feel so grateful to have an opportunity to take an organization, such a wonderful arts organization in Nebraska, to live audiences and coming out of that pandemic and bringing music to people, bringing a sense of solace and a sense of comfort in a time when we haven't had live music or even seen people's faces without coverings or, heard an orchestra live. And I really am hopeful and optimistic that we'll be able to do that this fall in larger numbers and with a larger orchestra on stage. So I think it's an opportunity. I'm excited to share music that I love, connect with the orchestra, deepen my connection with the orchestra, a group that I already love and know well. But we have so much time to get so much wonderful, fruitful work and music making done. I can't wait. It's not going to come too soon.
What were your first impressions of the symphony and Omaha itself when you came? I know that you have been here before. This isn't your first time. Were there any things that stood out for you?
Yeah, first of all, the orchestra is fantastic. It's a world-class orchestra in a world-class hall in a fantastic town where the community is so supportive and so energized to support and come and join and joyfully participate in the Omaha Symphony, in this art, not just with the symphony. You can see it in the museums, you see it in the zoo, and you see it in all the wonderful offerings, cultural offerings that Omaha has to offer. And I feel lucky to be a part of that, of a spoke in that wheel for people to really enjoy and get so much about living here. And I just think it's what impressed me so much when I got here, besides a wonderful connection with the orchestra, which was almost instant, within minutes, I would say, was the commitment to the orchestra and to the growth of the community, arts and otherwise. So I'm excited to do more work and do good work here in this awesome area.
That's amazing. Yes, I know everyone is very excited to have you on board and looking forward to your tenure here with the Omaha Symphony. You're a protege of Kurt Masur and have a background working both in the United States and Europe. The New York Times has described you as a conductor that leads with authority and enthusiasm. Can you talk a little bit about your leadership style and your rehearsal style within the orchestra? This may be something that non-musician types may be interested and curious about.
Yeah, I can only base it on what you know. Like Sibelius wrote what he knew, Mendelssohn wrote what he saw, and I rehearsed how I experienced orchestra. I played many instruments growing up. I experienced sitting in orchestra a lot. So my first entree and my first times conducting, I think and I hope I was very empathetic to how an orchestra felt on stage in a rehearsal and then in concert. And so a lot of my self-education, self-teaching, before I got to start learning with some great masters, as you pointed out, was thinking about if I was in orchestra, would I respond well to this gesture, physically, this rehearsal style, this attitude, this energy? And I was very thoughtful of how I came across. And you can only be yourself. So I don't have to change too much. And I don't recommend any conductor changing too much when you're on the podium versus off. But I think having spent so many hours, 10,000 hours in rehearsal, I was able to embody my ideal conductor if I was sitting there. And hopefully I'm getting closer to that ideal. Leadership style, rehearsal style, besides being empathetic, I love connecting with people. So when I'm rehearsing an orchestra, I love connecting with the musicians. And when I'm with an audience, I love connecting to the audience. And I think I'm very lucky to be in the center of all of that in any given stage. And that's a lot of the way I communicate to the audience and the orchestra through the conducting, but also through kind of taking everyone on a journey through any given piece of music we're going to play, any journey the concert experience is going to be. I definitely wanted people in the hall to feel welcome, to feel like they can come with a lot of knowledge or a little bit of knowledge. They can come in tails or jeans and flip-flops. None of that matters to me. You're here to enjoy something that I love so much, and if I can communicate that to you, my job is done. And so that's a lot of what I think about when I'm rehearsing, conducting, and then enjoying a live audience in the concert hall.
Yeah, I think that connection is so very important, and especially in this day and age where we're so limited in how we can travel and connect with people. And also, I wanted to underscore on the part of the Holland Center that measures have been taken to keep everyone safe as well. So, anything from touchless tickets to air exchange, all of that, people can rest assured that they can enjoy and experience firsthand without any sort of risk to their health. Hopefully, these things cannot be 100% assured, but certainly I know that the Omaha Symphony and the Holland Center are doing everything they can to keep their patrons safe.
And the orchestra and all of us, of course.
And that's wonderful to see as well. So can you talk a little bit, you referenced it earlier, but can you talk a little bit about your start in music and your experiences as a young musician, and then what inspired you to take up conducting? Because that's a little bit of a target role, for most people. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was one of those young children who was kind of voraciously wanting music. And that's the only way I can describe it, because when I saw an instrument, I wanted to play it. When I heard music, I wanted to dance to it. And this, according to my mom, this came from a very young age, starting at months old, 6 months, 8 months old. She would take me to a movie, and if it was a musical, I would just start dancing and tapping in tempo. And she thought that was weird. And maybe now that I've had kids, I kind of think it's a little bit weird too. So, Indian, first generation immigrant, from first time, she didn't know what to do. So I started tabla, and I started other Western percussion instruments. My first instrument was percussion, 4 years old, pounding out beats. My brother played violin, my sister played flute. So I kind of took those instruments a little bit when I started wanting to play more notes, not just rhythms. And so I started the violin. I played in string orchestras in like not my high school, but my middle school groups and other string ensembles, took private lessons. And then I started French horn, another instrument, yep, thank you so much. Took French horn, kind of ran with it. I respect violin players so much because I was much quicker a great horn player before I was a great violinist. So obviously I went to the horn first, or when I realized my time was more efficiently used on the French horn. And God bless the violinists who practice 8 hours a day, but that wasn't in me at the time. And French horn took me through a lot of different musical opportunities. I got into a good youth orchestra. I played principal in high school at many all states and played in my band and orchestra and marching band and jazz band at high school. And again, I sang in the music. Me and my best friend auditioned for the musicals our senior year. Because again, just whatever, if you want to see the cowboy in orange for Oklahoma, find a videotape from 1995. So for the high school, I don't know if it exists, but I was cowboy number 7. I don't know, for Oklahoma. And that was a great experience. It actually informs how you run an opera rehearsal, just because there's a wonderful number of people doing all these fantastic things. So anyway, I was quite voracious. I kind of did everything I could. And so I went to college. I went to UC Berkeley in California as an undergraduate. And I just know I wanted to learn more about something I loved, which was music. And I never thought it would be a career. But I double majored, and one of my majors was music. And as an upper division course, I learned a lot at Berkeley. It was fantastic. It was such a great background, such a great foundation. And by the end, my junior or senior, I took a conducting class as an upper division course, just to be, again, more curious about something that I love. and it stuck. It just was something that the teacher really encouraged me. I felt it really matched a lot of my skill sets. Like I really loved theory and history. I was nerdy with physics and math. I loved languages. I loved traveling. I knew I'd rather study a score or look at a score and read about music for 8 or 10 or 12 hours a day as opposed to practice my instrument for that long. So I knew I wasn't going to work. I knew my focus was going to be more interdisciplinary in whatever career I chose. And conducting was just a really nice marriage to a physicality that I was told was good, and just kind of went with it. I gave it a shot. I set myself a bunch of bottlenecks and goals to set because I wanted to be successful in whatever I chose to do. And I was able to overcome these goals I set for myself and become a working conductor, all the way leading me to here.
Well, that in itself is a feat, because there aren't that many jobs, certainly these days. So, yeah, congratulations again on that. And we'll look for that YouTube video from your high school musical, maybe on your website. I don't know, at some point. Maybe it'll appear. I don't
Sorry.
know. So, as we move into, your tenure with the Omaha Symphony, what's on your bucket list right now as far as repertoire? What do you really want to program in the next 5 years, say?
Without giving too much of away, because we're still crafting it, and I don't want to disappoint anyone if I announce something that we're not going to be able to do for all the reasons, pandemic and social distance included. Like I said, I can't wait to share my passions and to marry those passions with the talents and the amazing musicians in the Omaha Symphony. Composers I really gravitate to. I gravitate very much towards American composers, living and 20th century. I mean, I really enjoy Copland and Bernstein and Gershwin and all the great American composers that are out there, and some lesser known. And of course, living ones like friends that I have in all parts of the world, and all parts of America, that are composing really well and aren't getting enough of an opportunity to perform in an orchestra like the Omaha Symphony. So I'm certainly going to bring a lot of those some of their best works to the Omaha Symphony over the course of my tenure. John Adams is a living composer, actually from Berkeley, who I just am in love with as a human being, but also as a composer. So you're going to hear some Adams in the next couple of years, and it's not the president, it's not John Luther Adams, though he's great too. It's going to be John Adams, of many, many famous, at least in my mind, famous works. And not only is he our Aaron Copland, living Aaron Copland, he's also the nicest guy in show business. I mean, he's just a phenomenal human being. Besides that, just, introducing my loves to the orchestra, getting to know what they love and what they click with, and then sharing that collaboration with the audience at the Holland Center, at the Jocelyn Museum, in your community, at the train station, maybe, at the park that's newly being constructed, wherever we can make music for you to consume and enjoy. That's our goal. We're going to make sure that you are running into random acts of music wherever you are, and that's brought to you by the Omaha Symphony. And so if you like it over there in your neck of the woods, you might want to come into the Holland Center. Everyone's welcome.
Yes, that approach of being very open and welcoming to everyone is fantastic. We had a listener question, or a tuning in, I guess, viewer question about a particular piece, if there was one in particular that you haven't conducted yet that you wanted to.
In my life, and we'll probably do here, sure. There's a suite from Adams' opera, Dr. Atomic, that maybe perhaps one day we will do, maybe not. In terms of strong core repertoire I haven't done, there's a lot of seats. I'm still young. There's a lot of pieces I haven't conducted, but I certainly want to put my best foot forward with the Omaha Symphony when I arrive, and I want to do the things that I've done a lot and that mean a lot to me, and I can really show the orchestra what I'm able to, what my strengths are, honestly. And then over the course of time, we'll introduce new works, and I haven't conducted every Sibelius symphony, so maybe a couple of those. I haven't conducted every Mahler or Shostakovich, or, and then we'll there's not one piece. There's not one piece I'm willing to reveal on our live stream anyway.
Keep people waiting. Yes, I like that. We'll wait with anticipation, certainly. to see as the upcoming season is released. So at KVNO, we've been focusing a lot on marginalized composers. We have a couple of new programs, The Sound of 13, Silent Canon, which is coming up, all focusing on marginalized composers. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on classical music in general as an art form and the work of marginalized composers, perhaps how that plays into what you decide to program, that kind of thing?
You know, we're talking about access and community, and the best way, and this is going all across our industry, and it's something that we're thinking about in all aspects of our industry, but also the greater world. And there's nothing more moving and convincing to a young person who is from maybe a marginalized or at least underrepresented community than seeing that person on stage, than seeing that person's name in a program. And so I do think it's a responsibility as one of the largest arts organizations in Nebraska to use the Omaha Symphony as a platform to show all communities that not only do they belong, but they are actively composing, conducting, being soloists, and being orchestra musicians on stage at the Holland Center. So I think it's a huge part of what is important in our industry, what I want to accomplish as one of the very few American music directors in the U.S. today. A lot of my colleagues have retired or left orchestras, prominent orchestras, and there's very few that are leading American orchestras. So particularly, I feel an obligation as an American musician, conductor, to bring American music and American conductors and composers to the concert hall. Because on some level, internationally, classical musically speaking, we're not always given the biggest voice and the biggest presence in the classical music ether at large orchestras and international orchestras. I've been lucky, certainly. A lot of my colleagues have been lucky, and we do have those kinds of careers. But maybe we can find the next Yo-Yo Ma and our next cello soloist, and maybe we can find the next Joshua Bell and our next violin soloist. And I think Omaha is an important platform to do that. And I think Omaha would be proud of any composer from a diverse background, of any living, maybe some inexperienced composer, maybe some kids composing music from the community. We'll have some competitions and see if we can get those people on stage. I mean, I think once someone sees themselves in a role that they'd never seen before, whether it's president or principal or doctor, engineer, gymnast, hockey player, conductor, oboe player, something's going to click and they're going to say, wow, I can do that too. I think it's hugely important. And thank you for asking that question.
You're welcome. Do you have any advice to young musicians that are out there that are looking at a career in music? What would you say is the best advice for them as they look at that? I know certainly I heard the adage, well, you should find a real job, this kind of thing. What sort of advice do you have for young musicians, artists, composers, this kind of thing?
Great question. It's a tough question. I found that having the correct goal will get you to achieve that goal. And here's what I mean. If your goal as a musician is to play and only have the only goal, your singular goal is to play third horn in the New York Philharmonic, you may not reach that goal. And therefore you might not get to a place where you're fully comfortable and happy in your decision and your career choice. However, on the flip side, if your goal is to make music or make art, if your goal is to communicate that art to other people, if your goal is to embed that art in the community, inspire other people because of that art, and there's a wider goal and a wider sense of accomplishment that you will feel by setting yourself up for success, as opposed to having a singular goal that one person will get that job at that orchestra. And that's wonderful for that one person. But I found those people who get that position are approaching the entire process more holistically and really and their goal is music making and their goal is being the best themselves. And that often, more often than not, translates into success And guess what? If your level of success is that someone was happy when they saw my painting, and then another level of success is someone actually wanted to spend money and put that painting in their home, and that's your level of success, and you can take comfort in that and love of that and enjoy that feeling, then everything beyond that is gravy and amazing. And that can be taken in any art form, any career, and anything we do that make our lives purposeful on this in our time on this planet and in society. So I think about it in terms of expectations and in terms of goals and in terms of why are you doing this? And if you can think on that, I think there's a wide range of outcomes and a lot of potential for a ton of success.
That's wonderful. Thank you. We have a viewer question that says, what do you find are the common themes in the music that you enjoy? And the follow-up on that, what advice would you have to someone willing to expand their favorites list?
Well, I mean, not only what you do at a radio station, I feel like I'm curating. I'll answer the second part first. I feel that I'm curating a playlist for everyone to come and listen to. And so my goal is to start getting the audience to trust the Omaha Symphony, to trust myself, and that they're going to come to a concert. And they might see a Borden or an Adams or a composer they don't know, but if they trust us that we're going to play it passionately, play it at a highest level, play it with an energy that they haven't seen, and enjoy that live music washing over them. And I'm going to help them curate and take them through that journey, take them through that piece and that concert experience. That it's not going to really matter what's on the menu. They're just going to come for their Friday night concert and get whatever the chef throws at them, and they're going to enjoy it and walk out of their bellies and hearts and minds full. That's the goal of my playlist that I'm currently composing as we plan 21-22. So that's one start to expand your horizons. Come to concerts where you don't know the composers. Turn on your radio station for the projects you're promoting and the series you're exploring, because someone's curating that music for you. You're not just swimming around Apple Music classical and everything in the kitchen sink is being thrown at you. I'm sure there's a really wonderful algorithm in Spotify. If you start typing in composers that you love and start liking them, if the algorithm's not right, I'm going to talk to Spotify to get it right. But I'm sure more pieces along what you like will start popping up, and all the artificial intelligence that we have helping us along these days. And sorry, what was the first part of this question?
So what are the common themes in the music that you enjoy? Are there ones that you find there?
It's hard for me to define that, because it's like one of those things where if you see it, you hear it, you know it, it's yours, it's connecting to you. So let's see, my Desert Island, my top favorite composers are really ranging from Copland and Sibelius and Shostakovich and Mahler and Mozart and Beethoven and Brahms and Mendelssohn and Schumann. Those are all kind of core Germanic pieces, but the first ones, no one really puts Sibelius and Copland in the corner at the same time. And I think there's so much connection, and they definitely speak to me. And then throw in Shostakovich. I think if I had to say one thing, it's that when I hear that composer and I start studying their music, I feel a connection to some emotion, something intellectual or something emotional in me. It's really the music is speaking to me, and I can communicate. And because I'm feeling that, I can communicate it to an orchestra and an audience. And there are rare times where I'm hearing it and looking at the music, and I don't feel a connection, and I have to kind of artificially create that connection in order to conduct it and be successful. And those are less successful, I think, in general for the audience and everything. So I want you to trust that I'm performing and I'm bringing music that I believe in, and that I really have something that I think the composer has something to share, and Omaha Symphony has something to share with the audience as well when we perform that. And it starts with me. So, gosh, I don't think there's a common thread except humanity. Just something that speaks to what's unspeakable, what's undescribable in words.
Yeah, that way of connecting. And it's that careful crafting of your program, or in our case, a playlist, that really can reach people in a way that nothing else can. So I think that's really beautiful. We have another question. Who is your favorite of the greatest composers?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, you're really gonna make me pick my favorite child in live streaming. I think every conductor really appreciates Beethoven, and particularly for me, the reason why is that every time I pick up a Beethoven score, I feel like I'm learning something new and discovering something new I hadn't seen. He just was infinitely smarter and more crafty and more of a real artist and craftsman with his scores. So poring over his scores is always intellectually and emotionally riveting. And I don't think other composers quite achieve that across the board, from the first to the Ninth Symphony, and then chamber music and other stuff in between. I think he is able to really craft a piece of art in real time to your ears, because it's not looking at a piece of art. It's experiencing a piece of art over 20 to 45 to 90 minutes, you know? And so I don't know someone who does it as well, but I'm happy to find out and learn more and keep studying those scores. But I think if a singular person, it's that.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time, Maestro Bahl. I really appreciate it. It's been wonderful to talk to you. My thanks to you and to the Omaha Symphony. And congratulations again on your appointment as music director designate. Welcome to Omaha. We are very glad that you're here. And for more information about this weekend's program, you can go to the Omaha Symphony website, omahasymphony.org, and then join us for the performances at the Holland Center at 7:30 p.m. on Saturday evening and Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m. I'm Darci Gamerl, the music director at KVNO. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much, Ankush. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Looking forward to getting to know you, your radio station, and the whole community over the course of my tenure. I cannot wait to get started.
Thank you.
Take care.
You as well.